The black car rolled into the long driveway 3 hours early, tires whispering over wet stone. Grant Caldwell stepped out, closed the door without a sound, and stared up at the glass and granite he owned. He hadn't told anyone he was coming home. Not his assistant, not the house staff, not even his son Tyler. He wanted to see what really happened when no one expected him. For weeks something felt off. The halls felt colder. The servant's eyes slid away too fast. And Tyler, his wheelchair-bound boy, spoke to him less and less. "I own everything in this house," Grant muttered as he slipped the gold key into the front lock. "So why do I feel like a stranger in it?" The door opened on a hush of air. Silence. Then a sound he could not mistake even after months without it. Laughter. Not the polite laugh Tyler gave doctors. Not the small fake smile he used to get through lessons. This was bright, bubbling laughter, the kind that shakes a chest from the inside. Grant's breath caught. He followed the sound down the marble hall, past the piano that no one played anymore, past the portrait his late wife had chosen for the staircase wall. With every step, the laughter grew clearer and warmer. He reached the living room door, pushed it open, and froze. On the thick rug, a girl about Tyler's age crawled on hands and knees, her long dark hair swishing as she tossed her head like a pony. She wore a bright yellow dress that flared when she moved. Tyler sat in his wheelchair facing her, eyes wide, cheeks pink with joy, his hands up like he wanted to clap but forgot how. The girl whinnied softly, then neighed louder, and Tyler laughed so hard he bent forward. Grant felt his heartbeat slam against his ribs, half from shock, half from something that felt like fear. "What is going on in my house?" he whispered. "Before I tell you what Grant did next, tap like, smash that share, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Lagos, Atlanta, London, Nairobi? I'm shouting out cities in the next episode." Grant's hands were shaking as he stepped behind the tall bookshelf where the security camera couldn't catch him. He watched through the gap between two leather-bound books, feeling foolish and yet unable to move. The girl, he recognized her now, was Lila Okoye, the housekeeper's daughter. He had seen her once, hurrying past the back stairs with a backpack and an apple. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the main rooms. House rules, his rules. No staff children in the family areas. No exceptions. "Giddy up, Ty," Lila said in a soft, cheerful voice. "You're the coach. Tell me where the race goes." She called his son Ty. Only Grant's wife used to call him that. Back before the accident, before the rain, before the red lights and the phone call at 2 a.m., Grant swallowed hard and focused. Lila crawled in a circle, making a tiny ring in the rug's thick pile, then stopped. "Okay," she said, breathing a little. "Coach, new game. We try the ankle stretch." Tyler's smile flickered. "You promised we'd only play horse." "We did play horse," Lila said kindly. "You laughed 5 times. That was the deal. 5 laughs, then 1 stretch. Only 1. Then horse again." Tyler chewed his lip. "1 stretch," he repeated like he was checking the shape of the words. "1 stretch," she said. "You're the boss." Grant pressed his palm to the cool back of a book. He had been in therapies with Tyler that cost more than some families made in a year. He had top surgeons, top specialists, special braces, a home gym, even a heated therapy pool. None of them sounded like this girl. None of them felt like this moment. Lila scooted up to the front of the wheelchair, still on her knees, and tugged gently at Tyler's right footrest. "Okay, Ty," she said. "Can I touch your sneaker?" "Yes," he whispered, eyes big. She lifted his foot with both hands, slow and careful, and set it on the carpet. The movement was small but daring, like putting a boat onto water for the first time. "Good," she said. "You tell me if it hurts." Tyler nodded. She did the same with the left foot, then leaned back so he could see both shoes planted firm on the rug. "We do 8 counts," she said. "Just lean a tiny bit forward with me, then relax. Ready?" She counted, and he moved with her, just an inch, just a breath, but he did it. Grant's throat tightened. The last time he had tried to help Tyler stand, the boy shook and cried and begged to stop, and Grant had walked out before either of them said something they couldn't take back. "You're doing it," Lila whispered. "That's your body and it listens to you." "Really?" Tyler whispered back, like the idea was a secret no one had ever told him. "Really," she said. "You are the boss of your legs even when they feel heavy." She grinned. "You boss me around too. You're the coach, remember?" Tyler giggled, and for a bright second the room looked like sunlight after rain. "Okay," he said, trying on the sound of his own courage. "New game. Horse goes to the kitchen. But slow." "Slow horse," she agreed. She shifted to the side of the chair and lowered the brake. "We'll take 10 tiny steps. I'll be right here." Grant couldn't hold still anymore. The rules were not just broken, They'd been burned to ash. A staff child in the main room, touching his son, moving him, calling him Ty. And yet, under the anger, something else pushed its way up, unwanted and true. Tyler's eyes were shining. He stepped out from behind the shelf. "What is this?" he said too loud. Lila froze. Tyler flinched and grabbed the armrests. The room instantly felt colder. "Mr. Caldwell," Lila said, her voice small but steady. You were doing something you have no right to do," Grant snapped. He pointed at the hallway. "Where is your mother?" "Working in the laundry room, sir," Lila said. "She told me I could read to Tyler for a few minutes if he wanted company. He said he wanted to play horse instead." "There are nurses for that," Grant said. "Therapists, trained people." Lila swallowed. "Yes, sir." Tyler's hands slid off the armrests. He looked from Lila to his father, and a line of fear formed between his brows like a wrinkle in paper. "Dad," he said softly. Grant hadn't heard that word from Tyler without a blank tone in months. It hit him now like a bell. He softened, but pride shoved the softness aside. "You can't just change rules because you feel like it," he said. "In this house, rules keep people safe." Lila stayed on her knees, small but not weak. "Sir, I'm sorry I broke your rule," she said. "I thought the living room was empty. I only wanted Tyler to laugh. He hasn't laughed like that in a long time." Grant felt the sting of that truth like a slap. He turned to his son. "Is this true, Tyler? Did you ask her to do this?" Tyler's face went red. He twisted his fingers together. I asked her to stay," he said. "I didn't want to be alone." Grant opened his mouth, closed it, then took a breath and did what he always did, shifted to control. "Lila, stand up," he said. She stood, brushing her knees. "Go find your mother," he said. "Tell her I want to speak to her. Now." Lila looked at Tyler, who looked back like a child looking at a rope that might snap any second. "Yes, sir," she whispered. She moved past Grant, but he noticed something as she went. There was no fear in the way she carried herself. Respect, yes. Caution, yes. But not fear. It made him feel strange in his own skin. When she was gone, the room was too big. Grant cleared his throat. "Tyler," he said softer now. "You know you have therapy this afternoon. You could have waited for your therapist too." "Therapy makes me feel like a broken chair," Tyler said, the words bursting out like he had practiced them alone in his head and never found the door to say them aloud. "They talk about me like I'm not there. They say move this, hold that, good job, almost try again, and the clock moves so slow I can hear it. Lila just plays." Grant took a step back. He didn't know how to answer that. He wanted to promise things he couldn't name. "I pay for the best care," he said, because money was the tool he knew how to lift. "I know," Tyler said. "You pay for a lot of things, Dad." The word dad again, but with a different weight, and Grant felt something tight inside him bend. He walked to the window to hide his face and stared at the trimmed hedges, the fountain, the bright day that refused to match the storm in him. In the glass he saw his reflection, an expensive suit, a tired man, a father who knew numbers and deals but could not measure a small boy's joy. Footsteps tapped in the hall. Mrs. Okoye appeared at the door with Lila behind her. Mrs. Okoye's hands were damp from laundry. She dried them on her apron and kept her eyes on the floor. "Sir," she said. "You asked for me?" Grant nodded. "Yes." He looked at Lila, then at the rug where she had made small grooves like a trail in sand, then at Tyler, whose toes touched that trail. He felt the weight of his own anger and pushed it down. "The family areas are off limits to staff children," he said, voice even now. "You know that." "Yes, sir," Mrs. Okoye said. "It won't happen again." "I'm not finished," he said. She looked up carefully. "Your daughter was helping my son attempt a movement he is not cleared to attempt without supervision," he said. "If he fell," Lila stepped forward a half step before catching herself. "He wouldn't have," she said, then bit her lip like she wanted to pull the words back. I was careful." Grant turned his head slowly. "Lila," he said, "do you understand the risk?" She took a breath. "Yes, sir. I also understand Tyler laughed 5 times today. He hasn't laughed that way in weeks." Her voice trembled at the end, but she did not look away. Grant looked at Tyler again. His son's shoulders were rounded like he was bracing for a hit that wouldn't come. "Dad," Tyler whispered, "I liked it." The truth of it burned in the air. The clock on the mantel ticked. The fountain outside splashed. For a moment, Grant felt like he was standing between 2 doors, the one that kept rules clean and the one that let feelings in and made a mess. "Go back to the laundry room for now," he said finally, eyes on Lila. "I want to think." "Yes, sir," Mrs. Okoye said quickly. She took Lila's hand, but Lila slipped free and walked to Tyler. She leaned close, kept her voice low, and said, 10 steps later. Coach's call. Tyler nodded like she had handed him a small light. Then she left with her mother, and the room went quiet again. Grant sat on the edge of the coffee table and rubbed his forehead. You shouldn't have scared her, Tyler said. Grant blinked. I didn't. You did, Tyler said, surprising himself with the force of it. You scared me too. Grant swallowed and looked at his hands. I was surprised, he said. I'm sorry I raised my voice. The words felt new in his mouth. They tasted like pride cracking. Tyler watched him, wary but listening. Okay, Tyler said after a moment. Can we still do the pool later? Yes, Grant said automatically, then caught the habit and corrected himself. If you want to. Tyler's mouth tilted in a tiny smile. I want to, if Lila can time the laps. Grant stared. Lila? She counts soft, Tyler said. Not like the beeping watch. I hate the beeping watch. Grant tried to imagine inviting a staff child to the family pool session. His spine bristled. But then he pictured Tyler laughing with water on his eyelashes, and the bristle fell like dust. We'll see, he said, and heard how weak that sounded. He stood, walked to the door, and called for Oliver the butler, then stopped. Oliver was on the ban list of names in his head, a list he kept for meetings and mergers. This wasn't a boardroom. He took a breath and called for Mr. Lane instead. The older man arrived at once. Yes, sir? Send Nurse Patel a message, Grant said. We'll still do pool therapy at 4. Of course, sir. Mr. Lane hesitated, then added in a gentler tone, it was good to hear young Mr. Tyler laugh. Grant nodded without answering. Hours slipped by like quiet pages. Grant worked in his study with the door half open, ears tuned to every footfall. He read the same paragraph 3 times and remembered none of it. He kept seeing Lila's hands lifting Tyler's sneakers to the rug, careful as if she were setting down a bird. At 3:45 he and Tyler met Nurse Patel by the pool. The water glowed blue. Chlorine hummed faintly in the air. Lila stood near the glass door behind the line where staff were supposed to stop, a book in her hands. She was not watching them, but she was there. 2 sets of 5 lengths, Nurse Patel said briskly to Tyler. Count with the beeping watch. Tyler glanced at the watch on the table and swallowed. Grant saw it and felt the push of a choice. He turned to Nurse Patel. Let's try silent counting, he said. I'll count. No watch today. Nurse Patel blinked, surprised but professional. All right, Mr. Caldwell. She adjusted the braces, helped Tyler into the water, and guided him through the warm. Grant stood at the edge and counted in a soft, steady voice. 1. Good. 3. Tyler moved like a careful bird, slow and stubborn. On the 4th length he looked past Grant to the door. Lila held up the book and tapped the corner twice like a secret code. Tyler smiled in the water, then pushed to finish the lap. 5. Grant said, pride sliding in even though he tried to keep it out of his voice. After the 2nd set, Tyler was pink-cheeked and breathing hard. Nurse Patel praised him and stepped away to write notes. Grant wrapped a towel around his son's shoulders. Good work, he said. Thanks, Tyler said. He glanced at the door again. Grant followed his eyes. Lila lowered the book and gave a thumbs up, then turned to go. Wait, Grant called without thinking. His voice echoed off the tile. Lila stopped and looked over, caught between rules and hope. Grant felt the whole house hold its breath. He cleared his throat. Tyler did well today, he said, grasping for neutral words. Thank you, for earlier. Lila's face brightened. You're welcome, sir. She started to leave again, then paused, courage and caution wrestling in her eyes. Sir? Yes. Could I show Tyler a game I learned from my uncle after his accident? Grant's chest tightened. What kind of game? It's called 10 Tiny Steps, she said. You put your feet on the floor and try to stand for the count of 10. Sometimes you don't stand. Sometimes you stand for 1 second. But the brain remembers even a half second. We don't have to try it. I only asked because Tyler asked me this morning if he could try someday when he wasn't scared. Grant looked down at his son, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, eyes huge. Tyler whispered, Coach's call? Grant's throat worked. He had spent months trusting specialists in buildings with glass elevators and fern plants in lobbies. He had not trusted a child with a bright dress and a soft voice. But the laughter still rang in his ears. 1 minute, he said slowly. If Nurse Patel agrees. And if I'm here. Lila nodded, hope glowing like a lamp inside her. Nurse Patel returned, heard the plan and raised her eyebrows. We can try a supported microstand next to the chair, she said. No pulling. Just weight bearing for a moment. Grant nodded and wheeled Tyler to the thick rug by the sofa. Lila knelt at his feet again, careful as before. Nurse Patel stood on the other side, steady and calm. Grant stood behind the chair, hands ready on the handles, heart beating so loud he could hear it. Okay, Ty, Lila said. 10 tiny steps. We're not walking. We're just telling your legs, wake up a little. Are you ready to be the boss? Tyler swallowed and nodded. I'm the boss, he whispered. Lila smiled. On 3, lean forward a tiny bit. I'll be right here. 1, 2, 3. Tyler leaned. Lila slid one sneaker an inch, then the other, then tapped the tops of his shoes. Good, she said. Now pretend your belly button is a small sun pulling you forward. Tyler leaned more. His arms trembled. Nurse Patel placed 2 fingers lightly on his knee to steady it. Grant saw his son's jaw clench with effort. If it hurts, we stop, Lila murmured. It doesn't, Tyler panted. I'm okay. You are okay, she said. And you are brave. Grant's hands were tight on the chair. He wanted to grab, to fix, to do. Instead, he forced himself to wait. We go for 1 second, Lila said. Just one. Coach's call. Tyler nodded. He took a breath, leaned, and pushed through his feet. For a heartbeat, his weight shifted onto his sneakers. His hips lifted a whisper. The chair creaked. His knees wobbled. Now, Lila breathed. 1. Tyler's body rose a sliver, like a bud breaking the soil. Then he sat back hard, breath whooshing out. Silence. Then a sound broke it, Grant's own voice, rough and stunned. You did it, he said, not bothering to hide the tremble. Tyler stared at his father as if seeing him for the first time in months. I did, he whispered. Lila's eyes were wet. Nurse Patel smiled and made a quick note. We can try again for a half second, she said. No rush. Again, Tyler said, fierce now. Please. Lila laughed, pure from the center. Okay, coach. They tried again. This time the lift was shorter, but Tyler didn't care. He grinned like sunlight. Grant felt a thin wall inside him dissolve. For a moment, the mansion did not feel like a museum or a bank vault. Felt like a home. The spell broke with the sharp slap of shoes on marble. Mr. Lane hurried in, face pale. Sir, he said, breathless. Security camera at the back gate picked up a man climbing the fence. We called the police. The man ran. We think he dropped something by the garden door. It looks like a letter with your late wife's handwriting on it. The room spun. Grant's chest clenched. His late wife's handwriting? Lila's eyes jumped to Tyler, then to Grant. Tyler's hands crept back to the armrests as fear returned like a shadow. Where is the letter now? Grant asked, voice low. By the garden door, sir, Mr. Lane said. Security sealed the area. They are waiting for you. A choice yawned open again. Go chase a ghost from the past or stay with this small bit of future rising on a rug. Grant looked at his son, at Lila kneeling, at Nurse Patel standing steady. He looked at the door where the garden waited with secrets. He felt pulled in too. Dad. Tyler whispered. Will you come back? Grant crouched and looked his boy in the eyes. Yes, he said, meaning it more than he had meant anything all day. I will come back. He straightened, nodded to Nurse Patel, and headed for the garden door with Mr. Lane. At the threshold he turned. One more try, he said to Lila, surprising himself. Then stop until I return. Lila nodded, understanding, glowing like a promise. Grant stepped into the hall and felt the air change, cooler, sharper. At the garden door, 2 guards stood near a small rectangle of cream envelope on the stone. He recognized the loop of the first letter of his wife's name from 10 feet away. His breath hitched. He reached for it. A shadow moved behind the hedge. One guard shouted. Sir, get back, the other yelled. The head shook. Something metallic flashed like a small mirror in the sun. The envelope slipped from Grant's fingers and skated across the stone, stopping on the lip of the grate over the drain. Water gurgled below. For a heartbeat. Everything held still, man in the hedge, guards reaching, envelope smiling with familiar handwriting at the edge of a fall. And inside, beyond the open living room door, Lila whispered, 1, 2, 3, and Tyler pushed with everything he had. The hedge rustled again and Grant's pulse thundered in his ears. He crouched by the garden path, the envelope trembling between his fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted loops and clean strokes that spelled his late wife's name with gentle care. Elena Caldwell. She had been gone for 3 years. He'd buried her himself. But this was her writing. The air felt wrong, too still, as if the garden itself was holding its breath. Behind him, Mr. Lane called for the guards to circle around, but Grant's eyes stayed fixed on the cream-colored paper. He reached forward slowly, afraid that any sudden movement would break whatever spell had brought this letter to his doorstep. Just as his fingertips touched the paper, a voice whispered from behind the hedge, low, trembling, and familiar in a way that sent a chill down his spine. "Grant?" He froze. The guards aimed their flashlights into the bushes, but there was no one there. Just the echo of the name fading into the breeze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Mr. Lane shook his head. "Sir, we heard something, yes, but that voice?" Grant said, clutching the letter. That was her voice. He straightened, heart racing, scanning every corner of the garden. The shadows danced with the wind. One guard ran toward the hedge, kicking aside the leaves, but there was nothing, just a small locket glinting in the dirt. Grant stooped and picked it up. The gold was worn, the hinge bent slightly. When he opened it, his breath caught again. Inside was a photo, one he hadn't seen in years. Elena and baby Tyler, both smiling in the summer sun, his wife's arm wrapped tight around their child. "Sir," Mr. Lane said carefully, "maybe we should go inside." But Grant couldn't move. The world had narrowed to the letter and the locket. When he finally tore the envelope open, his hands shook so hard the flap ripped unevenly. Inside was a single folded sheet. The writing was faint, like it had been written years ago. "If you ever feel like the house is colder than before, it's because love has been locked out. Let it back in before it's too late." That was all. No date. No explanation. Just that message. His knees went weak. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt tears sting the corners of them. "Sir," Mr. Lane said again, softer now, "shall I call the police?" Grant shook his head. "No. This isn't a break-in. It's something else." He slipped the letter into his jacket pocket and turned toward the house. Inside, the laughter had returned. He could hear it faintly through the glass. Lila and Tyler. The sound pulled him forward like a compass pointing home. When he entered the living room, the sight stopped him again. Tyler sitting straighter than usual, Lila kneeling by the rug, counting softly under her breath. Nurse Patel was standing close, but not interfering. 1, 3, Tyler's small hands gripped the edge of the sofa, and for a fleeting second his knees locked. He was half standing, half floating between fear and triumph. Then he fell back into the chair, breathless but glowing. "That was 4 seconds, Lila said proudly. "You beat your record, coach." Tyler laughed, shaking his head. "It felt like forever." "Forever's good," she said, smiling. "Means you're getting stronger." Grant stood in the doorway, holding his breath so they wouldn't see him yet. The letter's words throbbed in his chest. "Let love back in before it's too late." He thought about how many nights he had worked late to avoid seeing Tyler struggle. How many times he had walked past the boy's room without knocking, convincing himself that silence was mercy. Watching now, he realized how wrong he'd been. Love wasn't a weakness. It was medicine, the kind his money couldn't buy. Nurse Patel noticed him first. "Mr. Caldwell," she said quietly, "you're back." Lila startled, then stood up quickly. "Sir, I'm sorry we were—" Grant raised a hand. "Don't apologize." His voice came out rough. "He's doing well." Tyler turned in his chair, face lighting up. "Dad, did you see? I stood again." "I did," Grant said, stepping closer. "You did amazing, son." The word son made Tyler's eyes glisten. He hadn't heard it with warmth in so long that it almost hurt. "Can we do more tomorrow?" he asked. Grant hesitated. "If Nurse Patel says it's safe, yes. But maybe I can join next time." The room went still. Lila's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "You mean help?" Grant nodded. "If that's okay with you, coach." Tyler grinned so wide it broke something open inside Grant's chest. "It's okay." Later that evening, after Nurse Patel and the staff left, Grant found himself walking down the servants' corridor, a place he'd never stepped into before. The walls were narrower, the lights dimmer, and yet it felt more alive than the polished marble upstairs. Lila's mother, Mrs. Okoye, was folding laundry at the table, humming softly to herself. When she saw him, her hands froze mid-air. "Sir," she said quickly, "I apologize if—" "Don't," Grant interrupted. "You've done good work here. Your daughter, she's helped Tyler more than anyone has in months." Mrs. Okoye blinked in disbelief. "Thank you, sir. I told her to stay out of your way. She meant no harm." "I know," Grant said. "That's why I'm asking. Would it be possible for her to spend a few hours with Tyler each afternoon? Under supervision, of course." Tears welled in the woman's eyes. She would love that, sir. He nodded, then added softly, and tell her she doesn't have to call me sir every time. That night, Grant sat in his study alone with the letter on his desk. The handwriting caught the light, shimmering faintly as if the ink still remembered warmth. He could almost hear Elena's laugh in the corners of the room. Love has been locked out, he murmured. Let it back in. He rubbed the edge of the locket between his fingers and thought about all the doors he had kept shut, not just in the house but in his heart. He picked up his phone, opened his schedule app, and cleared his calendar for the next day. For the first time in years, business could wait. Morning light broke golden through the curtains. Tyler was already awake, excitement buzzing through him. Dad, Lila's coming, right? Grant smiled faintly from the doorway. She's coming. But you have to eat breakfast first. Coach's rules. Tyler laughed. Okay. When Lila arrived, dressed neatly in a pale blue dress, she carried a small wooden box tied with string. Morning, Mr. Grant, she said shyly. I brought something. What's that? He asked. My uncle made this, she said, setting it on the rug. It's a balance box. When you stand on it, it tilts a little so your legs learn to adjust. Tyler clapped. Let's try it. Grant crouched beside them, checking the edges of the box. It looks safe enough, but no pushing yourself too hard. Yes, Coach, Dad, Tyler joked. Lila giggled, and for a brief moment all three laughed together, the sound echoing up the stairs where silence used to live. They practiced for an hour. Tyler managed to balance for 5 whole seconds, his grin radiant. Grant found himself smiling without meaning to. When Lila praised Tyler for every little success, Grant watched her closely. The patience, the gentleness, the way she treated his son not like a patient but like a person. Something in him softened further. He caught her mother's eyes through the window, Mrs. Okoye watching quietly with gratitude written all over her face. He nodded once and she mouthed thank you. After lunch, Grant returned to the garden. The guards had searched the grounds again but found nothing else. The letter still sat on his desk upstairs, but its message followed him everywhere. As he stood by the fountain, he noticed something unusual. Footprints in the mud, small ones not from boots or guards. They led toward the old greenhouse that hadn't been used since Elena's death. He followed them slowly, heart pounding. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Dust floated in the air, catching light like silver flakes. And there, under a sheet of old canvas, was a painting, half finished. His wife's painting. Her last one. The colors had faded, but the image was clear. Him standing in the garden with Tyler as a baby. But she'd left one corner blank, unfinished. On the edge of the canvas were faint pencil marks. Finish this when laughter returns. Grant sank onto a stool, staring at the unfinished spot. You always knew, he whispered. Behind him came a small voice. Mr. Grant. Lila stood at the doorway holding a towel. Mrs. Okoye sent me. She said you forgot this by the pool. Thank you, he said. She stepped closer, looking at the painting. She painted you. Yes, he said quietly. She did. She was good, Lila murmured. You can still feel what she felt. That's rare. Grant looked at her, surprised by the wisdom in her young face. You like art? I draw sometimes, she admitted. Not big things. Just faces. People I miss. Her eyes flickered downward as if thinking of someone far away. My dad lives in Port Harcourt. We don't see him much. That must be hard, Grant said. It used to be, she said, smiling faintly. Now I draw him and talk to God instead. It helps. Grant felt a lump in his throat. You're a remarkable girl, Lila. She shrugged. Tyler makes it easy. He's funny when he's not sad. He gets that from his mother, Grant said. The funny part. The sad part, I think that's me. Lila hesitated, then said softly, You're not sad anymore. You just forgot how to smile for real. But you're remembering now. Her words landed like truth dressed as kindness. He couldn't even speak. Instead, he nodded and she excused herself quietly. When she left, Grant looked again at the painting, at that unfinished corner, and for the first time he reached for a brush. Days passed, each one filled with more light than the last. Tyler's strength grew and so did his laughter. Lila became part of the rhythm of the house. Reading, drawing, helping with small exercises. Even the staff began to smile more. The mansion didn't echo anymore, it breathed. One evening, Grant found Tyler asleep in his chair with a sketchbook in his lap. On the open page was a drawing, 3 figures standing by the fountain. A man, a boy, and a girl with braids. At the bottom, Tyler had written in big block letters, "My family now." Grant traced the letters with a trembling finger. Then something caught his eye. Taped inside the back cover of the sketchbook was a folded piece of paper, yellowed like the letter he had found before. He unfolded it carefully. It was another note in the same handwriting. "If you ever doubt what family means, look where laughter lives. That's where I'll be." He looked up sharply. Through the window he could see the living room, Lila showing Tyler how to clap to a rhythm, both of them laughing so hard they couldn't stop. And for a moment, just a flicker, Grant swore he saw Elena's reflection in the glass, smiling. He walked to the window, laid his hand against the cold pane, and whispered, "I see you." Then came a shout from the kitchen, Mrs. Okoye's voice, sharp with alarm. Grant turned, heart skipping. "Fire!" someone yelled. He ran down the hall, the smell of smoke already thick. The toaster had sparked near the curtains and flames licked the edge of the counter. Staff scrambled for extinguishers. Tyler's wheelchair was in the next room and panic surged. "Tyler!" Grant yelled, sprinting through the smoke. He found Lila coughing, trying to push Tyler's chair toward the door. The fire was spreading fast. Grant grabbed a blanket, threw it over them, and shouted, "Hold on to me." He pulled them both through the heat, heart hammering, until they burst into the open garden air. The house alarm blared behind them, sprinklers roaring to life. Outside, Tyler gasped for air, trembling. Lila clung to his arm, eyes wide with fear and soot streaking her cheeks. Grant dropped to his knees beside them. "Are you hurt?" "No," Lila coughed. "Just smoke." "You saved him," Grant said hoarsely. "You went into the kitchen?" She nodded, tears spilling. "I heard him calling. I couldn't leave him." Grant pulled her into his arms without thinking. "You're the bravest girl I've ever met." Tyler, still coughing, whispered, "Dad, we're okay." Grant looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since Elena's death, smiled the way she used to, wide, unguarded, alive. "Yes," he said. "We're okay." The firefighters arrived minutes later, containing the blaze before it spread. The damage was minimal, but something deeper had changed. As the smoke cleared, Grant realized how close he had come to losing everything again, and how much he no longer wanted to live behind walls of fear and pride. That night, when the house was quiet again, Grant tucked Tyler into bed himself. "Dad," Tyler whispered. "Yeah." "If Mom could see us now, what do you think she'd say?" Grant brushed a strand of hair from his son's forehead. "She'd say she's proud," he said softly, "and that she misses us. But mostly she'd say keep laughing." Tyler smiled sleepily. "Okay." Grant kissed his head and turned off the lamp. As he stepped into the hallway, he paused, because on the floor near the door was another envelope. No one else was around. His hands trembled as he picked it up. The same handwriting. The same soft scent of lavender. He opened it and read, "You're almost there. Don't stop now." He looked back at his son, peaceful in sleep, then toward the window where the moonlight touched the half-finished painting waiting downstairs. Grant exhaled slowly. "I won't," he whispered. The mansion was silent again, but not cold. Somewhere deep inside, laughter was still echoing, the kind that never really fades. Morning crept into the house like a promise, thin gold sliding across the hall floors and nudging the corners of rooms that used to feel cold. Grant woke before his alarm and lay still, listening. He could hear the low hum of the central heat, the soft sweep of a broom somewhere downstairs, and above all, the faintest murmur of Tyler's voice from his room, counting, then whispering, then counting again. It sounded like hope practicing how to speak. He got up, pulled on a sweater, and walked the quiet hallway. Tyler was in his chair by the window, hair messy, the blanket crooked on his lap, a determined look set between his eyebrows. A line of tape was on the floor in front of him, just a foot long, bright blue against the wood. "What's that?" Grant asked, leaning on the doorframe. Tyler looked up, caught between embarrassment and pride. "A goal line," he said. "Lila said if I look at something simple, it tricks my brain into aiming instead of being scared. 10 tiny steps to the line. Then rest." Grant's eyes burned. "Did you try?" "Twice," Tyler said honestly. "I leaned. My feet felt heavy. But I touched the line with my toes without the chair rolling. That counts." "It does," Grant said. "It counts a lot." He wheeled his son into the bathroom, helped him brush his teeth, and they joked about the world's most dangerous enemy, mint foam, until Tyler snorted toothpaste and laughed, and Grant could barely hold the towel steady because he was laughing too. In the mirror, he caught a look on his own face he hadn't seen in years. He looked like a dad, not a man trapped in a suit he couldn't take off. Downstairs, Mr. Lane had already set 2 places at the breakfast nook, a quiet corner of the kitchen with a view of the fountain. Grant slid a plate of eggs onto Tyler's tray and poured orange juice. "What's on the schedule?" he asked carefully. Tyler's eyes flicked up. "Do I have to check the app?" "Not today," Grant said. "You tell me." Tyler swallowed a smile. "Then, maybe reading the balance box, and I promised Lila I'd practice hand drumming so my hands get faster." "Deal?" Grant said. He wanted to say you can invite her now, but he didn't need to. At 9 sharp, the bell chime in the hall rang once, light, polite. Lila stood at the doorway, hair in 2 neat braids, a gray sweater over a blue dress, a notebook hugged to her chest. She paused as if checking some boundary she couldn't see. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," Grant answered. "You're just in time. Coach set the plan." Tyler puffed his chest. "I did." "Then lead on," Lila said, grinning. They set up in the living room. Nurse Patel wasn't due until afternoon, but Grant stayed close, ready to step in. Lila placed the balance box on the rug and knelt. "Same rules," she said. "You're the boss. If you feel wobbly, it's okay to sit. Wobbly means your brain is learning." "Feels like jelly," Tyler muttered. "Jelly is a good student," Lila said with a straight face. "Jelly listens." Tyler laughed and put his feet on the box. He leaned forward on 2, and on 3 his ankles steadied and he held for 3 seconds. Lila clapped softly. "New record." "No way," he said, cheeks bright. "Way," she said, tapping the timer on her phone. "Guess what 3 equals?" "What?" "1 more than yesterday," she said. "That's how you win." Grant watched the rhythm of them, how Lila timed praise to effort, never too early, never too late. It reminded him of a skill in his world, the way you waited 2 seconds longer in a negotiation so the silence did the work for you. Except here the silence made space for courage. By mid-morning they took a break. Grant brewed tea for himself and cocoa for the kids. When he brought the mugs, he found them drawing on the coffee table. "Faces," Tyler said, showing him a rough sketch of 2 eyes, a nose, and a smile a bit too big. Lila turned her notebook half away, shy. "What are you drawing?" Grant asked gently. She hesitated, then slid it across. It was the greenhouse, but warmer, as if the glass were holding sun inside. 3 figures stood there. A boy in a chair, a man with a crooked smile, and a girl kneeling on the rug, tying a sneaker. In the corner, a 4th shape, not a person exactly, more like a light, hovered near the canvas as if watching. Grant's throat tightened. "You saw the painting," he said. "Yeah," Lila answered. "I like how it's not finished. Feels like a door half open." "That's a good way to say it," he said, surprised at how much her words mattered to him. Before he could say more, Mr. Lane appeared with a folder. "Mr. Caldwell," he said. "May I?" Grant stepped into the hall. "I asked our security vendor to analyze last night's footage," Mr. Lane reported. "We have partial prints on the garden gate. Not a match to any employee. Also, a neighbor's camera caught a shadow moving along the east hedge just after sunset. Too blurry for a face. Any word from the police? They're sending someone this afternoon. A civilian investigator recommended by a friend of the chief. Name's Dana Holt. Simple name, steady sound." "All right," Grant said. "Have them meet me in the study at 2. He hesitated, then added, "Have them check the greenhouse too." "Yes, sir." Mr. Lane lowered his voice. "Sir, one more thing. How staff are talking." "About?" "The letters," Mr. Lane said, careful. "Some think it's a prank. Some think it's a sign. People carry feelings about Mrs. Elena. I thought you should know." Grant exhaled. "Keep it as private as we can. No one harasses anyone else. If I hear otherwise, they're out." "Understood." At 2 the investigator arrived. Dana was mid-30s, neat braid, dark blazer, small notebook and a pen she flicked open with a soft click. She took in the study with one sweep, the framed certificates, the half-finished painting propped in the corner, the letter on the desk under a paperweight. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm sorry for the circumstances. I'll be brief and thorough." "Please," he said. He told her what he'd seen, the envelope by the garden door, the voice that sounded like Elena, the locket in the dirt. Dana listened without a blink, writing in tidy lines. "We'll test the paper," she said. "Sometimes old stationery holds scent and oil longer than you'd think. The handwriting, do you have samples?" He did. He kept them in a box he hadn't opened since the funeral, grocery lists, notes and cookbooks, a short birthday letter to Tyler written in purple pen. He set them out with hands that felt too big for the task. Dana compared them quickly, eyes narrowing. It's a strong match, she said. Either your wife wrote this or someone with access to multiple samples learned her style very, very well. Either way, it wasn't printed. It's ink from a hand. The locket. We'll dust it for prints, she said. But if it's old, odds are low for anything useful. Then she asked something no officer had asked him since the accident. Is there anyone who loved your wife enough to try to move you with her words? I don't mean steal from you. I mean, wake you up. The question put a stone in the room. Grant thought of Elena's sister who moved to Canada, of an old piano teacher who'd cried at the service, of a gardener who'd retired to Enugu. He shook his head slowly. If there is, they didn't tell me. Dana nodded, almost kind. Grief makes long plans sometimes, she said, closing the notebook. We'll be careful. When she left, the house felt watchful. Grant went to the living room and found Lila and Tyler building a tiny obstacle course on the rug. 2 couch cushions, a heavy book, the balance box at the end. What's this? He asked. A path, Tyler said. If I can touch the book with my toe, I get to choose the afternoon snack. If I touch the box, I get 2 choices. If you knock over a cushion, you owe me a dad joke you don't want to tell, Lila added. Grant arched a brow. Seems risky. Very, she said solemnly, then broke into a grin. Tyler leaned, tapped the book with the tip of his shoe, and fist pumped like he'd hit a winning shot. Chocolate chip cookies and grapes, he declared. Bold, Lila said, applauding. A sweet crunch combo. Approved, Grant said, amazed that this small normal thing could feel like victory. He stepped away to call the kitchen. That's when he heard the first ugly word break the day. It came from the side corridor, hushed but sharp. Favoritism, someone muttered. Rules for some, not for others. A second voice, lower, answered, the girl acts like she owns the place now. Watch. People like us pay for that kind of mistake. Grant walked into the corridor and the voices cut off. 2 staff members he barely knew stared at the floor. If you have a complaint, he said calmly, bring it to Mr. Lane. If I hear whispers tearing down a child for helping my son, I will let you go. Their faces shifted through shock into angry silence, then bland obedience. They nodded and scurried away. Grant stood there a second, surprised at the heat that rose in him. He wasn't proud of how he'd ruled this house before, but he knew one thing now, the cold would not be coming back while he could help it. At 4, Nurse Patel led a pool session. 2 sets again, she said to Tyler. We'll try a new float support after. Lila stood at the glass line, hands behind her back like a teammate waiting to be subbed in. Dana, the investigator, walked the path outside with a guard, tracing steps to the hedge while talking quietly. The day felt like 2 lines running side by side, healing inside, questions outside. On the 5th lap, Tyler glanced for Lila and lost count. He swallowed water, coughed, and panicked for half a second. Grant lifted him under the arms and said, "You're safe." Tyler clung, breathing hard. Lila tapped the glass twice again, steady, steady, and Tyler gave a wobbly nod as if he could feel that rhythm through the pain. He finished the set, and when he climbed out, he wore the brave, tired look Grant was beginning to love. "I want to try 10 tiny steps tonight," he said. In the living room. On the box. After dinner, Grant said, putting a towel around him. "We'll do it together." Dinner was chicken and rice and steamed carrots because the body needs boring fuel before big moments. Halfway through, an alarm chirped on Mr. Lane's phone. He excused himself, returned with a small frown, and whispered to Grant, "Sir, the back gate sensor tripped. It reset, but I'd like to check it." "Go," Grant said, his stomach tightening. He looked at Tyler's plate, at the line of carrots marching like tiny soldiers, and forced himself to smile. "2 more bites," he said. "Fuel." Tyler rolled his eyes and did it, then drummed the table in a rhythm only he understood. Lila mirrored it on her knee. The silly music calmed everyone. They set up in the living room after. Balance box centered. Rug cleared. Timer ready. Nurse Patel stood to the left. Grant behind the chair. Lila in front, kneeling. "All right, coach," she said. "You call it." Tyler took a breath that sounded like the start of a new day. 1, 2, 3. He leaned. His sneakers pressed the wood. His hips lifted a fraction. 1 second. 2, 3. The chair creaked, his knees quivered, his jaw clenched with effort, and then 4. He sat back, breath ripping out of him. The room went silent, then exploded with soft cheers. Again, he panted. "Please." 30 seconds rest, Nurse Patel said, smiling for real for the first time. Then again. Grant looked at the boy's hands. They shook not from fear now but from effort, from the shock of his body hearing a new command. Pride crashed over him so hard he had to steady himself on the chair. They were resetting when Dana stepped into the doorway. Her face was thoughtful, eyes lit with a kind of no-nonsense urgency. "Mr. Caldwell," she said. "Found something." Everyone froze except Lila, who quickly slid back to give Tyler space. "Show me," Grant said. Dana held up a small cloth bundle. "Behind a loose stone by the greenhouse," she said. "Hidden well. Wrapped in oilcloth. Inside letters. Many. Same cream paper. Same hand." Grant's heart stuttered. "How many?" "At least a dozen." The room seemed to tilt. The air thinned. Why would they be there?" he asked, even though some part of him knew the answer would hurt and heal at once. Dana shrugged with her eyes. "Because someone wanted you to find them when you were ready," she said. "And someone else decided you were ready now." They moved to the study. The kids stayed in the living room with Mr. Lane and a movie, but Lila hovered at the threshold like a hinge. Grant thought about telling her to go rest, then didn't. The oilcloth unwrapped with a tired sigh. The letters were numbered on the back in pencil, 1 through 12. He picked up the first. His hand shook. He read aloud because silence felt too small. "If you found these, it means laughter knocked. Good. I started writing these the week after the doctor said, accident risk low, because sometimes low is still not zero, and I've never liked betting on sunlight without an umbrella packed." Grant sat down heavily. It was her. The idiotic umbrella joke. He could hear her. "If I left and you stopped smiling, please don't make that a habit. If you work late because work doesn't cry, remember that our son will learn what love looks like by looking at you, even when he pretends he's not looking." He covered his eyes a second. Dana stood still as furniture, giving him space. He read on. "You're going to think strength means never asking for help. It doesn't. It means telling the truth out loud. Start with small truths. 2 a day. Example, coffee tastes like burned hope unless you add cinnamon. Example, I'm scared. Example, I miss you already." The second letter was shorter. "If the house gets too quiet, invite noise. Not the TV kind. People kind. I leave behind a list of 6 songs that made Tyler laugh last week. Try them on a Saturday morning while making pancakes. Smile at the mess. The third, you will want to make rules because rules feel like walls. Make doors instead. 3 doors. Kindness, patience, silly." He paused and rubbed the paper with his thumb like you might rub the back of a hand. In the 4th envelope was a photograph of the greenhouse, younger plants, brighter glass, Elena in a floppy hat pointing at a blank corner of canvas. On the back, "Finish this when laughter returns." The 5th was different. A sketch done in pencil, a child's face in profile. "That's me," Tyler said softly from the doorway, and they all turned because he and Lila had rolled into the hall without anyone hearing. His face was pale from effort and excitement. His eyes were huge. "I didn't want to miss." Grant swallowed and held the sketch out so he could see. "It is you," he whispered. "From that summer at the lake." Lila tugged his sleeve. "Do you want to go back to the chair?" "No," Tyler said. "I want to hear." Nurse Patel hovered a second, then let him stay, recognizing that sometimes bodies need stories as much as rest. Letter 6 held a twist. "If these reach you sooner than I planned," it read, "it means someone brave helped. Be gentle. They did it out of love, I promise." He looked up. The room swallowed. Lila's hands went very still on Tyler's armrest. Dana's eyes flicked to the girl, then back to Grant, measuring. "Lila," Grant said, careful, "do you know anything about how these came out now?" Lila's throat moved. She looked like someone who'd stepped onto thin ice and didn't know which way was sure. "I promised not to tell," she whispered. "But you're asking, so I think I can. My uncle, he worked maintenance here long ago. Before the accident. He used to fix lights and check the greenhouse pipes. He knew," she glanced at the letters, "he knew about the hiding place. Not all of them. Just the first. Miss Elena asked him to keep one envelope in case, and to tell someone she trusted if the house ever felt dead." Tears pricked her eyes. "He told my mom after he got sick and left the city. She told me last month when she saw how quiet Tyler was. She said, sometimes doors need knocking. So I knocked." Grant's chest hurt in 2 ways at once. You brought the first letter?" "Not inside the house," Lila said quickly. "I slipped it under the outer gate and prayed the wind would carry it where it needed to go. The rest, I didn't know they existed until today." Dana watched Grant's face, prepared to step in if the moment tipped toward blame. It didn't. Something else rose instead. Relief, gratitude, a tenderness so strong it made his fingers shake. "Thank you," he said to Lila, voice rough. You did the bravest, kindest thing. Lila exhaled like she'd been underwater too long. I didn't want to break rules, she said. I wanted to fix a heart. Mr. Lane cleared his throat, that quiet way he used when a practical matter was trying to squeeze through emotion. Sir, he said. Security wants to ask questions. Some staff have concerns. They think someone in service could be behind the break-in. The old chill tried to slide back in, but Grant caught it at the door and pushed it away. We will listen to questions, he said, and we will not turn kindness into suspicion. He looked at Lila. You will not be punished for this. Her chin wobbled and she nodded fast, like if she slowed she might cry. They read the 7th letter together in the study, Lila and Tyler perched in the doorway, Nurse Patel half in the hall, Dana leaning against a shelf pretending not to watch, Mr. Lane standing like a lighthouse. Teach him the pool game we made up, Elena had written. The one where you count a smile as a lap. He'll cheat by smiling at the start. Let him. He does, Grant said, choking on a laugh that turned into a cough. He held the page to his chest. He really does. The 8th letter carried a map, little arrows drawn from the kitchen to the living room to the greenhouse, with notes like sing here and sit here and cry here if you need to, nobody will mind. The 9th was just a list. Things that work when the world breaks. Pancakes, warm towels, someone listening, moving your toes on purpose, saying sorry, drawing a face, soft music, the smell of orange peel, counting to 10 again, counting to 10 slower. Lila murmured, she knew. She always did, Grant said. When he lifted the 10th envelope, the house alarm chirped again. The back gate. 2 chirps this time, then a long, angry beep. Mr. Lane's head snapped toward the hall. Dana straightened. Stay here, she said, already moving. Grant stood anyway. My son, with me, Nurse Patel said, rolling Tyler back gently. We're going to the safe room. Tyler grabbed for his father's sleeve. Dad. I'm here, Grant said. He looked at Lila. Stay with him. I will, she said, so steady it anchored him. He broke into a run, Dana at his shoulder, down the hall and through the mudroom, out into air that felt thinner than a minute before. By the gate, a shape darted, thin, fast, a shadow flipping between hedge and wall. A guard shouted. Dana cut left, her voice sharp and calm. Stop. The figure hesitated, then tossed something over the fence and scrambled up. Metal clanged. Shoes scraped. A hand slipped, caught, slipped again. The guard lunged and caught a jacket. The fabric tore. The figure dropped on the far side and vanished into the neighbor's trees. Got a piece, the guard panted, holding the torn sleeve. We'll run fibers. Dana picked up what had been thrown. Another envelope. She held it like a bomb. They wanted this scene, she said. They didn't want to talk. She looked at Grant. Do you want me to open it or you? He took it because some doors you have to open yourself. He slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a single photo cut from a larger one, the greenhouse in summer, and in the corner the face of a man. Grant didn't recognize him. On the back, someone had scrawled in block letters, not Elena's hand, ask why he kept the greenhouse keys. The letters leaned hard, like the writer's hand was shaking with anger. Grant looked at Dana. Who had the keys back then? She was already on it, flipping through her notes. Maintenance lead. Night guard. Head of grounds. Mr. Lane, who'd reached them red-faced from the run, said, We rotated keys after. He stopped, breath catching, eyes going strange. Sir, there was one more set. A spare held by me for emergencies. I kept them after the service because no one asked. Shame hit his face like a wave. I forgot to log them. Silence thudded. Grant stared at the man who had been steady for years, who had ironed his shirts when grief made his hands useless, who had kept the house from falling apart when the owner had nearly done the same. Where are they now? In the safe, Mr. Lane said, thick-voiced. Untouched. I swear. Dana squeezed the torn sleeve in her hand and said softly, Sometimes guilty isn't evil. Sometimes it's human. She glanced at the fence where the stranger had vanished. But someone out there has a plan. They went back inside. The safe room door clicked shut behind Tyler and Lila, and the quiet in the corridor felt like the pause between a storm's first and second wind. When the all-clear finally sounded, Tyler rolled out with Lila's hand on the chair handle. You're okay? He asked, face tight. We're okay, Grant said. He forced his own voice to loosen and added, and brave. Lila let out a breath she'd been holding too long. Who was it? We don't know yet, Dana said. But they want us to ask old questions. We will. That night, the house gathered itself like a person folding a blanket. Staff checked windows twice. guards took double shifts. Grant sat with Tyler until his son's breath steadied into sleep. Lila sat in the hall outside with her notebook, sketching the safe room door like a fairy door in a tree. When Grant stepped out, she closed it fast. "Sorry," she said. "It's just a door." "Draw all the doors you want," he said. "We need them." He looked at her for a moment, then asked, "What did your uncle tell you exactly?" "About the letter?" Lila worried the edge of the paper with her thumb. "He said Miss Elena laughed with him once while he fixed a faucet. She asked him what he was most proud of. He said, knowing when to fix with tools and when to fix with people. She got quiet, then asked if he was good at keeping secrets that help. He said yes. She gave him an envelope and said, if the house ever starts sounding like it's asleep with its eyes open, give this to someone who listens. He chose my mom. She chose me." Grant swallowed hard. "I'm grateful." Lila nodded. "Me too. He should have slept." "He didn't." He went to the study and laid out the remaining letters. 10, 11, 12. He opened 10. "If you're reading this later than I hoped, you've already chosen love more than once. I knew you would. Here's one more choice. Forgive someone who failed without malice. It will feel like giving in. It isn't. It's giving back to yourself the peace you lost when you grabbed the weight alone." He exhaled like he'd been punched and hugged at the same time. He thought of Mr. Lane and the keys. He thought of himself and all the doors he'd locked because it was easier than standing in a room with his own pain. He opened 11. "Don't let the house make one girl carry more than a girl should. Tell her thank you. Tell her you will share the load now. Make it safe for her to be a child again." He closed his eyes. He could do that. He would. He opened 12. "When laughter meets the old paint in the greenhouse, finish me. Use the color I hated but you loved. Yes, that ridiculous sunflower yellow. The line shakes good. That means your hand is where your heart is." He laughed quietly at that, loud enough that night felt less heavy. Morning came with a new kind of busy. Dana brought a printout of staff rosters from 3 years back. They cross-checked faces with the photo. Half an hour later, she tapped the picture. "Found him," she said. "Name's Caleb Knox. Night custodian. Fired 2 months before the accident for missing shifts. 2 warnings before that." "Why would he be in a photo with my wife?" Grant asked. "That's from summer," Mr. Lane said, peering. "We did a staff picnic back then. Anyone could have wandered into the frame." Dana's eyes stayed on the print. "Sometimes anger finds a face and calls it truth," she said. "We won't guess. We'll find him." She made calls, voice clipped but kind, the way you talk to people who don't owe you anything. An hour later, she hung up. "I have an address," she said. "He's in town." Grant looked at Tyler, who was arranging sticker stars on his notebook. A star for each brave moment, his private scoreboard. Lila sat beside him, making a list of silly door ideas at his request. Door that only opens if you make a monkey noise. Door that opens slower when you frown. Door that squeaks compliments. The urge to keep the world from touching this small circle was overwhelming. But the world had already knocked. "We'll go," he told Dana. "Not to punish. To ask." "I'll come," she said. "You're not going alone." Mr. Lane stepped forward. "Sir, stay," Grant said, not unkind. "Take care of them." He tipped his head toward the kids. Mr. Lane nodded, shame still lingering but softened by purpose. They found the building 2 streets over from the bus depot. Paint peeled from the stair rail. A stray cat napped on a doormat like it paid rent. They knocked. No answer. Dana knocked again, then spoke through the door. "Caleb, my name is Dana. I'd like to talk." Silence, then a shuffle, then the door opened a crack. A man's face, thinner than the photo, eyes rimmed red. "Cops?" he rasped. "No," Dana said. "Just questions." He opened the door another inch. "Who's he?" "The husband," Grant said. The man flinched. "Of the lady who died?" "Yes," Grant said. "May we come in?" Caleb hesitated, then stepped back. The apartment smelled like old fried onions and something sweet gone stale. He cleared a chair with the back of his arm. "I don't have much. Sit if you want." Grant didn't sit. "Did you come to my house?" "Last night?" Caleb's mouth twisted. "No. I ain't climbed no fences. I don't climb much of anything no more." He lifted his pants leg. A brace hugged his calf. "Fell off a loading dock 2 years ago. Hate stairs." "Do you know anything about letters?" Dana asked. "Letters?" "In my wife's hand," Grant said gently. Caleb's eyes flicked between them, then away. He swallowed. "I knew her," he said. "She used to bring coffee to the night folks. Not fancy. Just hot. Wrote notes sometimes. Said people needed to hear their own names said nice. He took a breath like it hurt. She was kind to me. When they fired me, yeah, I missed shifts, okay, my mom was dying, I drank, I said things. Stupid things. Said the house used people. She looked at me like I'd broken a lamp and said, the house is just walls. People decide if it's a home. He rubbed his eyes. I didn't climb no fences, he repeated. But I heard someone bragging at the bus stop last week. Said rich folks get the message when you send it the right way. He had a jacket like security, you know, the kind with shiny stripes. Didn't catch his name. Dana wrote fast. What did he look like? Caleb described a tall man with a bad haircut and a habit of clicking his tongue on his teeth. He had a key ring he kept twirling, he added. Bragged about knowing how to make doors weak. He grimaced. I told him to shut up. Thought he was blowing smoke. A new security supervisor stood there with 2 guards behind him, chest heaving like he'd sprinted the whole hall. His name tag read, R. Pike, and his mouth was set in a line that looked permanently disappointed. He pointed at Lila like she was a suspect. You, he barked. Hands up. Step away from the boy. The room recoiled. Tyler's face drained. Lila lifted her palms on instinct, eyes huge. What is this? Grant said, voice cold with a kind of quiet he hadn't used in months. Pike didn't look at him. She's the staff kid who broke perimeter rules, he said to the guards. And she's the one slipping in and out near the greenhouse. Caught on a blur this morning at dawn. I was bringing towels, Lila said, small but steady. I go around the long way because the short way is slippery. I'm not sneaking. Save it, Pike snapped, stepping forward. Tyler's hands flew to the wheels. No, he cried. Leave her. Pike ignored him, reached for Lila's wrist. Fast, rough, too rough. And that's when everything that had been building inside Grant, love, rage, grief, the echo of letters, the promise to choose doors, rose up like a wave that didn't ask permission. Enough, he said, not loud, but the word cracked like ice. Pike froze. You don't touch a child in my house, Grant said. You don't scare my son. You don't make accusations without proof. You are done here if you take one more step. Pike's face flushed an angry blotchy red. Sir, with respect. Don't say, with respect, if you don't know how to show it, Grant said, moving to put himself between Pike and the kids. Mr. Lane, he called, not taking his eyes off the supervisor. The old butler arrived, pale and breathless, fear and shame fighting in his eyes. Escort Mr. Pike off the property for the night, Grant said. His access is suspended until further notice. Dana? The investigator stepped in behind Pike like a shadow that carried a badge of common sense. If you detain that child, she said flatly, you'll be answering to me and the chief in the morning. Pike sputtered, then clamped his mouth. He turned on his heel and stalked out, the guards trailing, unsure. Mr. Lane followed, shoulders square as if an old spine was remembering itself. Silence poured back, heavy and sweet. Tyler's breath came in hiccups. He was fighting not to cry. Lila dropped her hands and started shaking. Not from guilt but from the shock of someone trying to yank her out of a safe place. Grant knelt by both of them. He was wrong, he said. You're safe. I'm sorry you were scared. Lila nodded fast, blinking hard. It's okay, she said, because she was the kind of kid who tried to make things easier for grown-ups even when it wasn't fair. It's not okay, Grant said, gentle but sure. But it will be. He turned to Tyler. You just held for 9 seconds. That's a miracle I'm not going to let get drowned out by nonsense. Tyler sniffed, a half laugh, half cry. 9, he whispered. 9's almost 10. 10 tomorrow, Lila said, voice wobbly but brave. Coach's call. A sound pinged from the study down the hall. A motion alert from the greenhouse camera rerouted to Grant's desk. Everyone's head turned. Dana's eyes narrowed. Stay with them, she told Nurse Patel and Mr. Lane, who'd returned to the doorway like a chastened dog who still wanted to guard the house he loved. She and Grant moved toward the study side by side, steps light, hearts tripping. The screen showed the greenhouse from a high corner. Night had fallen fast, and a small lamp inside made the glass glow like a lantern. A figure stood at the canvas. Not the tall shadow from the fence. Smaller. Slighter. The figure reached up, hand trembling, and set something on the blank corner of Elena's painting. Then the camera panned slightly. No, not the camera. The figure had tapped it, as if reminding anyone watching to pay attention. The lamp flickered. The figure turned, and for a split second before the bulb hummed back to full, Grant saw a face through the glare and his blood went cold. He knew that jawline. He knew that scar near the eye. He knew it because he saw it in the mirror every morning, softened by time and grief and shock. The face in the glass was his brother's, the man he hadn't spoken to in 4 years, the man who walked out after the accident and never turned back. The lamp steadied. The figure looked up as if he could see the camera and lifted a finger to his lips in a silent etch. Then he slipped behind the canvas. Grant's mouth went dry. Dana whispered, "Who?" and stopped when she saw his face. He couldn't say the name. He couldn't say anything. He was already moving, down the hall, past the rug where his son had stood for 9 seconds, past the place where a girl had been brave, past the doors he had kept closed for too long, toward the greenhouse where a ghost with his brother's face had just asked him to be quiet. Grant didn't shout. He didn't call the guards. He moved like someone walking into a memory he was afraid to break. The greenhouse door gave under his hand with a soft click, and warm air brushed his face. The little lamp on the workbench hummed. Dust hung in the light like slow snow. At the far end stood the canvas Elena had left half-finished, the corner still blank like a mouth waiting for a word. A figure stepped from behind the canvas and the years fell away. The jaw he knew. The scar near the eye from a bike crash when they were boys. The way the shoulders sloped like a man who carried guilt where a backpack should be. "Ryan," Grant said, and the name tasted like old coffee, bitter, familiar, necessary. Ryan lifted his hands a little, not surrendering, not fighting, just showing they were empty. "You saw me," Ryan said quietly. "I wasn't sure if the camera would catch." "Why here?" Grant asked, his voice steady but shaking underneath. "Why now?" Ryan looked at the canvas and back at his brother. "Because she asked me to," he said. "Not yesterday. Not last week. Years ago." Grant's breath hitched. "Elena asked you?" "Yes," Ryan said. "She knew you and I weren't good then. She said if anything ever happened to her and the house went cold, I should bring the letters when I heard laughter again. She didn't want me to rush you. She said you'd break if pushed. I waited. I waited too long. That's on me." He touched the edge of the canvas with 2 fingers like you touch a grave marker and added, "I heard laughter yesterday. Real laughter. I came." Grant stared at him, trying to place all the pieces. The voice at the hedge? "That wasn't me," Ryan said, mouth twisting. "I don't whisper my own name like a ghost." He took a breath. "I did leave the locket. I thought seeing her face would make you open one door. It worked." He winced. "Sneaking was wrong. I didn't want to scare the kid. I didn't want to scare anyone. I just didn't know how to knock without making you slam everything shut." "You could have called," Grant said flatly. "You could have come to the front door like a man." "I tried calling 2 years ago," Ryan said. "You didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. I was a coward. I know it." He drew a long breath and let it go. "But I'm here now." Footsteps sounded in the gravel outside. Dana stopping on the path, waiting where a good investigator waits, to observe if the truth could walk out on its own. Grant didn't look back. He kept his eyes on his brother. "Who climbed the fence tonight?" he asked. "Who threw the envelope?" Ryan shook his head. "Not me. I came through the old tool door. The hinge still sticks if you don't lift it, remember? The guy on the fence is someone else. And he isn't doing it for love." "Then who?" "I have a guess," Ryan said. "And you won't like it. It's the new supervisor, the one with the tight mouth, Pike. He was on a contract once where I did night security. He likes to stir trouble and then sell himself as the fix. He got canned for setting false alerts to justify overtime, then came back with a new company. He's the kind who learns a house's weak spots and makes them weaker so he looks strong." Grant felt a cold anger slide into place with a terrible logic. The bragging man at the bus stop with the key ring. The way Pike had rushed into the living room and grabbed at a child without proof or care. The blur, near the greenhouse at dawn. He looked at Ryan and saw no lie in him, only a tired man telling a hard thing. "If you're wrong, I'll take it," Ryan said. "But if I'm right, he's got help or at least a pattern. Check his logs. They'll be too clean where they should be messy and messy where they should be clean." Dana stepped inside then, soft as a cat. "I heard enough to help," she said, eyes flicking from one brother to the other, mapping the old fight and the new refusal to run. "I know Pike. Not personally but by type. We'll pull his last 3 contracts." She turned to Ryan. "You should tell me how you came in, show me the door, let me dust it, and then we'll decide if you stay or go tonight." Ryan nodded. "I'll show you. I'm not here to hide." He looked at Grant again, and there was the boy they both had been, the one who built forts and called those forts castles, even when they were just blankets and chairs. "I'm sorry for leaving after the funeral," he said. I didn't know how to hold your anger and mine at the same time. I let go of both and then I let go of you." The words cracked something old. Grant felt it. He didn't trust his voice, so he gave the smallest nod a brother gives when a brick is taken out of a wall. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It was a door. They walked the tool door. Dana took photos, brushed powder, collected prints. She found 2 sets. One matched Ryan's hands on the edge where he'd come in. The other was someone else, smooth, heavy on the push side, like a man who forces instead of lifts. She sent the images to the lab and to the chief. On her way back to the house, she spoke low into her phone about pulling Pike's timesheets and gate logs. She was all motion and control. The house, once a place of too much control and not enough love, now held both in balance like careful scales. Inside, Tyler was awake and buzzing, fear replaced by a fierce curiosity he couldn't help. "Was it a bad guy?" he asked, and then before anyone could answer, "Did you see him? What did he look like? Did he have a cape?" Lila made a face. "Bad guys don't wear capes in real life," she said. "Only in cartoons." She looked at Grant and then at Ryan, who had followed behind Dana, hat in hand like a penitent. "Who's that?" Her voice wasn't scared, it was alert. She had learned in a hard world to read new people fast. Grant took a breath. "This is my brother Ryan," he said. "Your uncle?" Tyler asked, eyes going round. "Yes," Grant said, and the name uncle put a soft thing in the middle of the room like a cushion set under a falling glass. Ryan crouched carefully, knuckles on his knees like men do when they are trying not to crowd a child. "I'm not great at hellos," he said, "but I'm better at them than goodbyes." Tyler blinked, then smiled like kids do when they decide fast about a heart. "Hi, Uncle Ryan," he said. "Hi, Ty," Ryan answered, the old nickname coming out as easy as breath. Lila watched their faces, weighed their tones, and made her call. She stepped a little closer, not enough to crowd, enough to welcome. "I'm Lila," she said. "Okay if I shake your hand?" "More than okay," Ryan said, and they shook on a line of trust thinner than a thread and stronger than it looked. Mr. Lane arrived with news he clearly wished he didn't have to carry. "Sir," he said to Grant, eyes gone small with worry, "I found a discrepancy. Gate alerts from this week were relabeled in the log. The timestamps don't match the camera time by a full 30 minutes, sometimes more." Dana's brows rose. "Who has access to edit those?" "Pike," Mr. Lane said. "And me. But I didn't." "I know," Grant said, and he did. He could hear Elena's letter about forgiving people who failed without malice. Mr. Lane had failed to log spare keys. He had not set fires in the house to look like a hero. "Copy the full logs," Dana said. "Send them to me and the chief. Pull Pike's access now." "Done," Mr. Lane said, the old spine of duty straightening with relief when someone finally told him exactly what to do to make things right. They moved to the study again because the study had the letters and the letters had become a kind of anchor. Ryan stood at the doorway like a man who had once been a boy in this house and wasn't sure if he had permission to cross the threshold. "Come in," Grant said, and it was the first permission he had given his brother in a long time. On the desk lay envelopes 10 through 12, read last night by a man who couldn't sleep until the words inside had climbed into him. Grant put a hand on them without lifting them, felt the paper under his palm, a small weight with a big voice. "She asked you to wait for laughter," he said to Ryan. "We have it now." Ryan nodded, eyes bright with held-back tears. "She always knew when to aim for the sky and when to aim for the next step on the stairs," he said. "I always loved that about her." "Me too," Grant said, and there it was, the solid ground of shared love, a place brothers could stand even when the bridge between them shook. The chief called Dana back while they stood there. Pike's previous jobs had patterns, odd alerts during his shifts, small finds of evidence in places cameras didn't quite see, fast blame on the easiest targets, usually staff without power to argue. A neighbor down the lane, the one with the porch camera, sent a short clip. Last night's shadow ducking under the hedge wore a jacket with reflective stripes and carried a heavy ring that flashed when he moved. It was not proof yet. It was a drumbeat. "We bring him in quiet," Dana said to Grant. "No yelling. No scene. No chance to make you the villain in your own house. He comes to the study, we show him the edits, we ask clean questions. People like him crack when you give them their own words to trip over." "And if he doesn't?" Grant asked. "Then I put cuffs on him on your marble floor and he can explain the scuffs to the judge," Dana said, and for the first time all day Grant almost laughed. They asked Pike to come up. He came with stiff shoulders and chin high, like a man walking toward a podium where he felt certain the microphone already loved his voice. He stopped when he saw Ryan. "Who's this?" "My brother," Grant said. "Not your concern." Everything is my concern when it comes to security, Pike snapped. Except gate logs you rewrote, Dana said, choosing the word rewrote on purpose because it sounds worse than edited and because it was true. She slid a printout across the desk. Your changes in red. Camera time in black. Your notes about a blur near the greenhouse at dawn the same day your badge pinged that door without an entry in the written log. Want to try that again? Pike's face thickened with anger. He went for the easiest defense, a counterattack. He jabbed a finger toward Lila, who had stayed in the hall with Tyler but leaned in now when voices rose. This kid moves around like she owns the place, he said. Everyone sees it. Everyone sees what you let them see, Dana replied. You staged alerts to build a case against the child because you needed a simple story. Here's another. A man with a key ring bragged at the bus stop about sending messages to rich people. He clicked his tongue and had a haircut like yours. Pike's jaw worked. You're reaching. And you're done, Grant said quietly. You will leave this property now. You will not return. I will be pressing charges if the chief agrees the evidence is enough. And even if he doesn't, the door is closed to you here. That's a choice I get to make. Pike's eyes flicked between their faces, looking for a crack to wedge himself into. He didn't see one. He tried one more swing anyway. You'll regret trusting them, he spat, the word them thrown toward the hallway where a girl in a blue dress and a boy in a chair sat like the heart of the house. No, Grant said, his voice gentle and iron at the same time. I regret the years I didn't. Dana took Pike's arm. He pulled back at first, then shut his mouth when he saw the second officer in the doorway, summoned without a shout, standing ready to put muscle where polite words ended. They walked him out. Mr. Lane shut the door with a soft click that sounded like the first safe breath after a storm. The house exhaled. The air felt lighter. The letters on the desk looked like they'd always been there, like they had waited for this day. Ryan stood still, hands open at his sides. You did that right, he said to Grant. You didn't make a show. You made a choice. Grant rubbed his face and then, for a second, let himself lean against the desk. It felt like picking up a weight I should have picked up a long time ago, he said. Turns out it wasn't as heavy as I told myself. Most weights aren't, Ryan said softly. He took a cautious step. Can I stay tonight? On the couch? I won't get in the way. I'd like to hear the house laugh. Grant looked at him for a long moment, the old fights walking past like ghosts who were tired of making noise. Yes, he said. You can stay. But not on the couch. There's a guest room. Elena liked the yellow curtains. You'll take that one. Ryan's mouth twitched. Sunflower yellow? Of course, Grant said, and there it was, another small thread tied. That evening the house made a new kind of sound. Dishes clinked in the kitchen. Lila taught Tyler a drum pattern on the table, the kind you feel in your chest as much as hear. Mr. Lane told Dana a story about how Elena once made everyone eat pancakes for dinner because the day needed a flip. Ryan stood at the doorframe like a man at the edge of a pool remembering he used to love water. Grant walked to the greenhouse with a paint box under his arm. He opened the lid and took out the color Elena had told him to use, the one she had teased him about, sunflower yellow. He set the canvas on the easel and called softly, Tyler? Lila? Would you help me? They came, not running, just sure. Nurse Patel followed with a camera because sometimes you need proof for your own heart later that a moment really happened. Ryan leaned in the doorway, careful not to crowd, eyes wet. This corner, Grant said, touching the blank space Elena had left. She wanted it finished when laughter came back. I think it's here. He dipped the brush, hands shaking. I want your hands on it too, he told Tyler and Lila. We'll make the line together. If it shakes, good. That means our hands are where our hearts are. Lila bit her lip and nodded. Tyler's eyes were big and bright. Grant guided the brush. Tyler steadied his wrist. Lila set her fingers over Tyler's, warm and sure. They pulled the stroke across the corner. It wasn't straight. It wobbled. It shone. It was perfect. Nurse Patel took the picture. Mr. Lane, who had come behind without anyone noticing, covered his mouth with his hand and then lowered it and clapped once, softly, like in church. Later, in the living room, Tyler asked for 10 tiny steps. Not because he wanted to prove something to a camera or to a man who had tried to scare him, but because finishing the painting had put courage in him like electricity in a wire. They set up. Balance box centered. Rug clear. Timer ready. Lila in front, kneeling, eyes soft and fierce. Grant behind the chair, hands ready, heart steady. Call it, Lila whispered. Tyler looked at the blue tape on the floor, the goal line he had made that morning. He breathed in and out slow. 1, 2, 3. He leaned. His feet pressed. His knees trembled, then listened. 1 second. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ryan's hand tightened on the door frame. 7. Dana felt her chest thump like a marching drum. 8. Mr. Lane mouthed the numbers like a prayer. 9. And then 10. Tyler held it a half second more because sometimes the body learns it can do more only after it does exactly enough. He sat, breathless, face shining the way a room shines when someone finally opens a window. No one hooped. No one broke the spell with a loud cheer. They all just breathed and smiled and let the boy have the center of the world for a quiet, perfect beat. Then Lila broke into a grin so wide it lit the whole house. "Coach," she said, voice trembling with joy, "you did it." Tyler laughed, and it was the kind of laugh Elena had written about, the kind that meant the house had decided to be a home again. The next day the chief came with papers. Pike would be charged with tampering and trespass. The neighbor's clip plus the logs plus the fibers from the torn jacket made a path a court could follow. Caleb Knox got a letter from Grant's lawyer clearing his name in any talk around town and offering him a steady job with lighter duty. "You okay with that?" Ryan asked, one eyebrow up. "Yes," Grant said. "Because Elena would be. And because men are more than their worst week." He meant it. He didn't say the rest out loud, and so am I. A week later, Grant put words to promises. He called Lila and her mother into the study and told them he had 2 ideas. 1. Pay Lila to be Tyler's afternoon helper officially, with proper training from Nurse Patel and a schedule that left room for homework and play. 2. A scholarship fund in Elena's name for staff children who showed unusual kindness and courage. "That's you," he said to Lila, voice thick. "You knocked on a locked house with love. That's the bravest thing." Lila didn't cry often. She cried then, quiet, eyes shining, hand in her mother's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "We'll honor it," her mother said. "We'll use it to be the kind of people she wanted in this house." Grant and Ryan took slow walks at night, the kind where you talk around the big things while your feet learn to be side by side again. They spoke about their father, about the day of the accident, about the awful fight in the kitchen that had sent words flying like knives. They forgave each other not in one grand speech but in 100 small, honest sentences. "I was proud and scared," Grant said once. "I thought if I slowed down, grief would catch me and never let go. I ran because I thought if I stayed, I'd say something unforgivable," Ryan answered. "Turns out silence can be unforgivable too." They laughed at that the way men laugh when they notice they're still alive. The painting in the greenhouse dried. It looked different in the morning than it did at night, as if the sunflower yellow held sun in it and let it out a little at a time. People in the house started going there just to breathe. Mr. Lane set a chair by the door and sometimes sat in it for 5 minutes between tasks. Nurse Patel left small notes under the pot of basil. 2 more seconds today, he's learning. Lila drew the finished corner again and again as if teaching her hand to remember what courage looked like. Tyler asked to add 1 small sticker star to the frame. "For Mom," he said. Grant pressed it in place with him, fingers together. On a soft Saturday, Grant woke to the smell of cinnamon. He went downstairs to find pancakes on the stove and Tyler at the counter with Lila, both of them flipping pancakes badly and laughing about the ones that folded like letters. "It's a sign," Lila said, making a face. "Pancake mail." "It means breakfast says hi," Tyler replied. Ryan tossed a slice in the air and almost caught it and bowed when it landed back in the pan. Mr. Lane played one of Elena's old Saturday songs on his phone, the one with too much banjo that made her dance around the kitchen just to make Grant roll his eyes and then dance too. He danced now. It was messy. It was real. It was the kind of moment Elena had written about when she told him to invite people kind of noise. When the plates were finally empty and the kitchen looked like a flower bomb had gone off, they sat in the living room. No one dressed up the moment. No one said, "Now we heal." They just let it be what it was. A family on a morning that tasted like new. Grant looked at his son and saw not just a chair but a boy who could hold 10 seconds and would hold more. He looked at Lila and saw not just a helper but a child with a fierce, gentle heart who had carried a house across a gap it didn't know how to cross. He looked at his brother and saw not a fight but a friend he had missed, a man who had come back through the right door at last. He looked at the letters and the painting and the sunlight, and he finally, fully understood Elena's message. Love isn't an idea you frame and hang. It is a thing you do with your hands and your words every day until the house you live in starts to sound like something alive. He stood and went to the window where he had once stared out at a cold fountain and tried to will himself into being a father without feeling anything. He turned back to his family and spoke simply because simple was strong. "I can't fix yesterday," he said, "but I can choose today. I choose to listen. I choose to laugh. I choose to open doors. If I forget, remind me. If I get afraid, sit with me. We'll do this as long as it takes. Tyler rolled forward and bumped Grant's knees with the front of his chair, their old way of hugging without falling over. Lila slipped her hand into Grant's and squeezed once. Ryan nodded with his whole face. Mr. Lane cleared his throat like a man not crying. Nurse Patel smiled the soft smile of someone who gets to witness and knows what a privilege that is. That afternoon, they took one more picture in the greenhouse, the finished corner glowing for hands on the frame, Grant's, Tyler's, Lila's, Ryan's. Dana came by later with a signed statement about Pike and a rare smile that said justice had done its job without breaking anything new. She looked at the photo on the table and said, "That's what it should look like," and then she left them to it, which is also what justice should do when a home remembers how to be won. Years from now, people would ask how it changed, how a cold house warmed, how a boy who was afraid to stand held 10 seconds and then 20, how a man who thought money could buy safety learned that safety grows best in the soil of trust. The story would be told 100 ways, but inside the house they would tell it like this. A girl knocked on a locked door with love, a brother came back the way a good brother should, a father opened his hands, and a woman who had to leave too soon left letters that showed them where to set their feet. The lesson stayed simple because the truth is simple. Love is not loud, but it is strong. Rules matter, but kindness matters more. And every hard day can be divided into 10 tiny steps if you count them with someone who will not let you fall. If this story moved you, tap like, share with someone who needs a reminder that homes can heal, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Drop your city so I can shout you out in the next video. What moment hit you hardest? The 10 seconds, the letters, the painting, or the choice to forgive? Your words help this channel grow and help more people find stories with heart. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. New life-changing stories drop every week, and your subscribe tells the algorithm, send the warmth here.